Welcome everyone to another Observability Clinic, Analytics Without Boundaries with Dynatrace. It's a practitioner's guide to Dynatrace notebooks and dashboards to empower teams driving better business results. So this is a series of clinics we do to follow up on all of the stuff we announced at Perform in February. And today's topic is really about the analytics capabilities, and the best people that I know of that can tell us more about it is the product managers. Philipp and Thomas. Grüß euch. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I think take it away. I mean, you guys have built an awesome product. We did some great announcements and you've prepared stuff for us that you want to show us.
First off, not completely true. We started to build an awesome product. As we said at Perform, we're just getting started.
Right, yeah.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, let's jump right in, I would say. If my mouse works and my
While you figure out your mouse, folks that are online, if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature. I will be able to moderate. And in case you're watching this recorded, then please do me the favor and either reach out to us on social media, post a question in the Dynatrace community, or we also have an AMA and Ask Me Anything exactly a week after today. Which should be the 30th. So it's going to be 2 live sessions with product specialists. And you can also ask questions in case you're seeing this offline.
I didn't get it to work, but I found a workaround. Let's see why that works.
Yeah.
The Mac bar is your friend. I tried to make it quick so we actually get to the nice part, not lunch or free dinner, but the demo. Let's start with a recap of Perform. You've certainly have heard about one of the first things, which is the data challenge that we all still face, which means lots of data that gets ingested, lots of data to then analyze. And the next thing is there's different data types. So we also see the convergence of security, services data, infrastructure data, digital experience data. And you certainly have realized that only if you put some of these together, you can actually answer certain questions that you have. No surprise there, I guess. And you've also certainly, or maybe seen already in October, that we actually released a solution to this. We call it Grail. It's our data lakehouse. And it has 2 things, or it tackled 2 things. First off, this massive and parallel processing that you need in order to analyze all this massive data. And the second thing, I think we always been strong at, and we're even getting strong at this, I would argue, is to not just have data, but to have context-rich data and to have the topology underlying all this to connect bits and pieces. And not just that, at Perform, we also went one step further and we actually released a whole new Dynatrace experience, all built on and based on Strato, our new design system. And we also shipped some we announced some out-of-the-box apps, and in particular for explorative analytics, dashboards, and notebooks. And here it's very worthwhile to note what Andreas Lehofer, our VP of Platform, actually said at Perform. The dashboards, as we know it, our current solution to this, is just one piece or one part of the solution when working with data. And this is exactly why we also released and announced, I keep mixing things up, announced that we're gonna provide you with a second app, which is called Notebooks, in order to square the circle and to not just be able to observe your data or monitor it, but also to explore your data. And with it, let me actually start at the, let's say, very high level at what we actually think analytics without boundaries actually means, because, I mean, that's a nice term, but what does it mean? For us, it means exactly what I, in essence, touched on before. It means having one solution so that all your data types come together. For us, it also means that you get immediate results, which is then the rule, rather than configuring and tailoring, which then hopefully is the exception. It also means that you can interact with this data in order to slice, dice, and analyze, and not just look at results, like on dashboards. And whenever we are faced with anomalies or with abnormal behavior, we can actually make use of all this connectedness, the topology, and things like events, problems, annotations that you put on top. And I certainly forgot a second one, which is and should be at the core, if I find it. I think I skipped over it. Okay, never mind. So to sum up, to not bug you too much with this visionary talk, for us it means in essence one sentence, which is going from data to answers to intelligent automation, which means making this data not just insightful, but also actionable in seconds. And I said, we're just getting started, so expect more. And how does dashboards and notebooks actually allow this? There's 5 things that I can now not navigate to with my mouse. And can I click? Nah, nothing works here. I don't know what's wrong today, but it's 5 things. The first one I kind of already said. It's the new design system, it's Strato, that allows for way faster and smoother and seamless flows. The second is, I already touched on this, Grail in essence, one storage to rule them all, to be able to fetch all your data in one place, which wasn't the case before, isn't the case right now. The third one then is to also be able to take context with you seamlessly, which is intense, something very new and awesome, in order to make it easier for you to work across apps in the future. But it's not just Grail in essence, that would be the fourth one, which is all the data in Dynatrace, but you can also blend in external data, which you can do via ad hoc functions that you can use in both apps in order to get all your API stuff in. And last but not least, also more flexible and more versatile filtering using variables. And you will see all these 5 points in the demo. And with that, I'm handing over to Philipp.
Thanks, Thomas. So I think we definitely need to find a new mouse for you.
Yes.
Maybe ship something to Vienna. Yeah,
I can ship you my Windows laptop if you want to and replace your Apple.
Yeah, I should get a new Mac, I guess. Throw it out.
So I think if you watched the first session from Andy, actually, he was already showing a little bit of notebooks and dashboards. But today we really want to go a little bit more in detail about those 2 apps. So as soon as you have access to the new UI in Dynatrace, this is what you will see. It's actually what we call the launcher, and everything is now running on the app engine. And all those icons here are basically apps, and some apps are really familiar to you, I guess, for example, the hosts or the Smartscape or the problems. But we are also introducing some new apps. And one of those apps is, as Thomas already said, notebooks. And there is just, let's click on it and launch it. And now you are in the notebooks app, which is really a way to explore, to analyze your data, running really your custom analytics on the data that you have in Dynatrace, and even external data, actually. So that was one of the, I think, most common questions I got, actually, from you, from the customers of Dynatrace is, okay, we know you have all this great data that the one agent is discovering, that you are ingesting into Dynatrace, but and solving specific use cases, everything great. But then if you have maybe a very specific question, right, maybe connected to your specific domain, it was always like, okay, how can I now solve this additional use case? And with notebooks and also the new dashboarding experience, we want to provide you these powerful tools to basically answer any questions you can come up with, I would say. Yeah, quick intro to the Notebooks app. So notebooks are based on documents. So you can see I have a notebook open, which I was working on before. I see some other recent notebooks, but I think for this demo, we will just create a new empty notebook. This is what you will see if you create an empty notebook. And to a notebook, you can add different sections. And the section is either a Grail query, a code, so you can run serverless functions out of notebooks, or a command based on Markdown. And the easiest way to get started is really with one of the snippets that we provide, let's say for logs, for example, fetch logs. And this will add the snippet to you, and you see this run query button. And as soon as I press the run query button, this snippet basically fetches the last 100 log lines from Grail. And automatically, and this is really one of the concepts that Thomas explained, is really this kind of time to data, time to visualization is like minimal, right? So you queried it, you see it in a nice table view. And now maybe let me collapse this and open the option pane. Now you can customize your results. So top, you always have the query, at the bottom, your results. And now what you can do, and what I will do actually, so you see this snippet was limited to 100, but let's remove this. We automatically limit this to 1000 entries, but you can increase this limit with the limit command. But what you see here is I can customize the visualization actually, and customize the table in that case. So for example, one thing I like to do is actually disabling the line wrap. So I see a little bit more of my log lines here. But the other thing is now I can choose what do I want to see from these log entries. And for example, I'm interested in the timestamp, in the content of the log, and the host where this log was captured, the log source, and the log level, for example. So now with this UI, I can really work with the data I just queried and kind of represent it in a way that it makes sense to me. And as I said, Notebooks is really there for doing your custom analytics, where maybe based on this analytics, it's a report you share to someone else, a post-mortem that you share with team members, or for example, just some prototyping that you do, and so on. So it can be more or less anything. And in our demo case, I would like to get a little bit an idea of, okay, what logs do I see actually in Dynatrace? And where are they coming from? What severity do I see, for example? And Notebooks provides you some really easy functionality to do this. And maybe the first thing I want to know is, I said I'm looking at the log level. I want to see which types of log level do I see across my logs. And all you need to do is click on the log level header, and we provide different interactions on the data. And what I'm looking for is really summarizing. So basically aggregating the log level across my log lines. And a small detail I did here, I was pressing the Alt or Command key on Mac. And what this does is actually it attaches this command to the query in a new section. So really, without me writing it's now any DQL, it basically added this to the query, so the summarize command, and I suddenly see, okay, which kind of log levels do I see across my logs in the last 2 hours. So this is already, I guess, some helpful information. I can maybe sort this, right? So let's say sort this, and I would say, I can see that there are alerts and emergency logs, so quite various different log levels, because this is now really querying across all my logs. And
Philipp, one quick question.
Sure.
Can you repeat this again? You said you hit the Alt key or the Control key.
Exactly. So it's a little bit hidden, I would say, at the moment, but it's the Alt key. Whenever you interact with your data, for example, you can also click on the log source and say, okay, I want to filter only for this specific log file. You can press the Alt key, and then it says created in a new section.
That's actually a cool thing, because you start kind of, you know, in the top you have like all of your data. You start with all the logs, and then as you refine it, you could just update the query, but with this you don't lose your whole kind of transaction, right, on how you are exploring the data.
Exactly. Yeah, a great comment, Andy, because this also explains a little bit an additional concept of notebooks. So you can see I added a section beneath, and I will add some more sections. But this is really, we want to make it easy to kind of document your process that you're working with, right? So if I share this now with you, you get an idea what I was actually doing, and it's always like this kind of top to bottom approach, where I start maybe with a broad query and then refine down and finding my results that I want to share, but making it easy for you to know, okay, what actually happened in this notebook. One other really cool thing about notebooks is that you can easily switch visualization. So now we were looking at tables, but in this case, maybe it would be nice to actually look at the different visualizations. So let's say, for example, a bar chart. And suddenly I can see my log levels in the bar chart. I can just go to the bar chart options and change the layout. And I get, for example, a nice bar chart for my log lines. And this looks already good. I mean, there are a lot of non-log lines. I mean, I could filter that out, but let's leave it like this. As I said, a notebook is built on sections, so I can also give this section a title. So let's say number of logs per log level. And if I'm not interested in the query, I can also hide this and I just see the result actually.
Makes it a little cleaner, huh? Makes it much cleaner. Yeah.
Definitely makes it cleaner. So I really, I think it's as soon as you don't really kind of editing the data anymore, I usually always hide the query to get a better overview of that. So now I have the absolute number of log lines, but we also built a couple of other interactions into the notebooks. So for example, if I would click on timestamp, I see this number of records over time. So again, doing this in a new section, this will now count the number of logs in a 1 minute interval over time. So also, I think a very common question, right? So for example, how many error logs do I have over a specific period of time? And one important thing maybe to mention here, we select the default visualization here, the table, but let's switch to the line here. So again, it's really kind of, I can do a line chart, I can do an area chart, I can do a bar chart. So really switching these visualizations to what you think makes sense is helpful. You can see Dynatrace automatically recommends some of these visualizations to you. And that kind of helps you then to analyze further, or I don't know, if you prefer an area chart, use an area chart, and so on.
Philipp, one quick question. That means we have some semantics about the data as well, like timestamp. We know it's a timestamp, I guess, right? Because that's why we then give you the option. Are there other semantics too that we should highlight here, or are you covering this later? I don't want to.
Exactly. No, please just ask away. Also, and if there are any questions from the community, just pass them on. Yes, so we know actually what data we are looking at, and I think this is really a concept that was always true at Dynatrace. We really want to provide you with the context, right? So in this case, it was a timestamp, okay, and you can summarize over time. Maybe not that fascinating, but one other thing that you see here, we have actually a host ID, and if you are using Dynatrace, you might recognize that. And here you could think about, okay, I can, for example, filter this. So I would then only fetch logs for this specific host. But there's another really cool option here, this explore and open. And this Thomas was briefly mentioning it. This is what we call intents. And what this does is now it recommends you apps where you can open this host. So suddenly you have all that context. You could, for example, switch to the Smartscape and see where in the topology it lives. Or you can, for example, view the host. So I will just do that. And what this does, it really opens the host app. You could see here, really, you can see that the host app is now open, and it displays you all the information for this specific host. I think a few that a lot of you know, and kind of having the knowledge about the context of the data is so important, I think, to do meaningful analysis.
Yeah, and I think I just want to stress this again. We work with a lot of people, and having everything in a single click to go from up or down the stack is just amazing, because you don't need to, you don't need to go to a different tool. You don't need to go and kind of, navigate yourself and find the right thing by querying around and clicking, making multiple clicks. We have all of the data in context, which means we know when we ingest a log line, we automatically enrich it with information. Where was the log line captured? Which host? Which process? Which container? And then we have Smartscape, which means we can walk up and down and left and right the dependency map, and this is just extremely powerful and makes navigation so much easier, and therefore makes you more efficient.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, the kind of the notebooks concept is not something we invented. So analytic notebooks are, there are a lot of different solutions, I think, out there. But I think what is really unique about is what Andy just explained, really. So this jumping left and right, top and down, and the topology, and having all this there at one click is what it is. So I was navigating back to the Notebooks app, and maybe that helps me to explain one more concept of notebooks. One thing, as I did not give it a name, let's do this. I switched to the my demo notebook. But the concept I wanted to explain, so it's documents, as I said. What does this mean? It means it actually saves the information that I was querying inside the notebook. And if you are a Dynatrace user, I think this is a little bit of a new concept. So that was something also we got a lot of feedback on, is when you did your analysis in Dynatrace. Usually there were two things that where users always said, that's a little bit hard or not really a great user experience. And one is the time frame, like adjusting the time frame, getting exactly the time frame that maybe a colleague was using. And the other thing was retention times, right? So whenever something aged out or aggregated, you would not see it. And this is one thing where notebooks, where we persist the results into a notebook, so that will be there forever, right? So as long as your user is there, you will see these results, and that makes it also very powerful if you do your analysis and say, okay, how did this look like, I don't know, half a year ago? You can jump back and see all your data that you analyzed before.
So Philipp, another question from me, and then one question that just came in, and I see, Thomas, you're already answering it, but I will answer it also later on audio-wise. The first question that I have, this means that I can use notebooks to really finally, when I analyze a certain situation, I have a performance engineering background, so I really love analyzing performance tests. And if I have a performance test that is a year old or 2 years old, the challenge was always I may no longer have the data available in that granularity. Now what I can do every time when I run an important performance test, or when I have a problem in production, I can create a notebook with all of the data that is relevant to analyze the situation. And this notebook will forever keep that data from the time frame stored. Is this right?
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. And that means, and I know I've done this before, but I'm excited about this. That means I can even take the notebook. I've seen it. You can export it even, and even, I mean, we do a lot of internal demos, and I remember when you guys did the demos at Perform, I was kind of quote unquote stealing it, and I was downloading a notebook from a demo environment and then importing it to my own tenant. But I could see the data because the data comes with the notebook, even if you export and then import it. And this is, for me, it's really awesome. Right? It's just exactly what you said. People have been asking for this for so long. Yeah.
Yes. Nothing to add from my side, to be honest. But I think it is amazing. Yeah.
There was one question, Thomas, that you just answered in Q&A. The question was, to spell it out, and giving you a chance to answer it live. The notebook will be a separate link, or will it be part of the tenant's menu?
Good question. So I was mentioning the new UI at the beginning. So as soon as we start to roll out these updates, you will be able to see the new UI. And there it's really basically a part of the launcher. You can click it. You have here the side panel, and basically everything from Dynatrace is still there. It's again, as I said, a new UI. You can go. There's actually a nice shortcut with Control K or Command K. You have a global search. So I could, for example, search for service, and I can open the services app, for example. And this is a few all of you will know actually, and you see that. And then you can jump between notebooks, services, for example. You can see which app is open. And this is basically how it works with the new UI.
Thomas, there's another question that I see you have been taking on to answer in the chat. Do you want to quickly answer it live?
Nah, that's notebook stuff. Philipp should do it.
Okay, then I'll throw it over to you, Philipp. I will read it out. Will the notebook also retain the data not displayed in it? For example, a column that I choose not to display at first, but related to the same time frame?
That's actually a really quick question. So the short answer is yes. And why is basically, so I showed this at the beginning. Let me open the options for the table again, so I can customize this table. And the interactions or things that are configuring here are really kind of client side, so what I see in my notebook. So I can just add this column. But in this case, all this data is really stored in the notebook. So you can go back, as I said, like to an old notebook, to something that was shared, and can enable more columns, like the host name, for example. Didn't know why I did not enable that. So that's helpful information. But yeah, you can do that later on, and it's stored there. The only thing is, if you modify the query, run it again, then only what is kind of returned by the query is stored in the notebook.
Yeah, because I think this is also one thing that I wanted to highlight when you showed this. In the query itself, right now, you basically say, give me all the data in the query. The query itself also allows you to say, I only want to have particular fields as the query result, and then only those fields will be part of the query result. And then you can additionally say what you want to visualize. And I think that's the separation. That's the difference we need to make here. Yeah.
Exactly. I just showing it a little bit here on this area chart. So you can also say, okay, I don't want to see the log lines with none level or info. And so there's changes, but in the background, still the whole information is stored. However, what might be interesting, so, and I'm looking at log level over time, and I say, I want to see only error logs. And this is also a really great thing about notebooks. So the interactions are not only on the table visualizations, but you can interact on any kind of visualization. And I click here, and I have like this filter. And you see, every time you see refine query, it's changing the query. So now I'm doing this, and now I'm only seeing error logs over time. And now this is maybe back to the question is, okay, now only this error log count is really stored because I filtered for errors in my DQL query.
And then Jackie was just asking a follow-up question that I think also goes into that area. What happens to the notebook when the retention policies have expired, for instance, specified by the logs? I guess the question is, when you have a notebook and it contains the data, let's say from a load test you do today, in 3 years from now, when you open up that same notebook, I would probably call it notebook from load test of what day is today? March 23rd. You wanna persist that notebook and keep it with a name that makes you can go back and find this data, right? As long as you don't rerun the queries, the notebook contains the data as well from the last query that was executed.
Exactly. So the logs will be still there in the notebook document.
Yeah. So Jackie, hopefully that answers the question. I think what I will see is that we probably end up having people really storing and creating notebooks just to keep data for certain use cases, scenarios, load tests. I see a lot of potential here with when you do post-mortem analysis, when you do a problem analysis in production, then you want to add a lot of data into the notebook, and then you want to keep it, and it will always keep the data as well in that particular notebook.
Exactly, and it's on the one hand, we have Grail now, so our data lakehouse where we can ingest a lot of data, but still, if you analyze something, usually it's really a small piece of that data that you're looking at, and you would like to find it again. And so that's really a nice way of explaining maybe a notebooks document. It's something that you did with your kind of expertise that you brought to it, and a slice of the data that you have within all your observability data that is very important to you or your team members or your company. Okay, back to my notebook a little bit. So I modified this. I'm now looking only at error logs. Again, I said it's easy to customize. So let's change the color to log status. So error logs are red. That makes more sense to me. I can change also the time frame. So for example, if I want to query this for the last 24 hours, I see, oh, we had some increase here in the error logs. So that's maybe something we should investigate. what happened there. I could, for example, then add a comment here based on Markdown. Let's say we should look at the increased error logs. And Thomas is a good guy here to look at that. Thomas, maybe something for you. By the way, Markdown. So if you're not really too good with Markdown, we have some nice buttons here.
Awesome. I always have to Google for Markdown cheat sheet.
Yeah, it's the same actually for me, especially if you do a table, for example, then I'm kind of lost. I can do maybe a list, but you can see, you can, by the way, also really nice thing here is you have also autocomplete, and what it does actually, it also suggests you the queries that you did. So I can, for example, the query I used in the tile above, I can incorporate this in my Markdown tile. So I see it now here, for example, even if I had the query from the chart. So if you want to explain, for example, a query, that's a really nice thing you can do.
Philipp, one quick question. Vladislav is asking two questions. One is related to dashboards, so that will give the chance to Thomas to answer later. But the first question is related to what you're doing here. Where is this data coming from that you're displaying here?
The data that you see here, or you can work with in notebooks, is coming from Grail. So it's queried from Grail. I was, maybe that's a good segue actually. I was now talking a lot about logs, but we have more data in Grail, and more is coming. So if you look at the snippets, you can also query time series data. So for example, here is a snippet which queries the CPU usage of hosts. And also what you saw, I was just hitting run query, and it automatically showed me a line chart. So we know, okay, this is a time series, you will see a line chart. If you fetch logs, you will see a table. And it's not only time series, so we also have events in here. Again, coming from Grail, you can fetch the last 100 events. There you see even a new view, so the record view, where you see all the properties on the event, which makes it easy to get an idea, okay, how does this event data look? Because there is no kind of fixed schema behind it. You can see all the keys and values that are in there. And again, same thing, you can interact with that. So I see, for example, the event has a browser type in here. I could just click on it. I have the same thing as on the table, and I could summarize on that, and I see all the different browser types. Everything desktop here, maybe because I'm limiting to 100. So let's do this for a little bit more events. 24 hours was maybe a little bit optimistic. Let's see, but should still work. And then you get basically an idea what is the distribution here of browser type across the events. Could be that some events don't have that on it, and yeah.
While you're waiting for this, Vladislav, if you're maybe new to Dynatrace, just so you know, the Dynatrace has multiple ways to ingest data. The most common way for most of our customers is through our one agent technology that you can either deploy as an operator on Kubernetes or on any of your Windows, Linux machines, whether on-premise or in the cloud. These agents can also automatically ingest logs. You can also feed logs to Dynatrace, right? We have integrations where you can feed logs from whatever log source you have to Dynatrace. You can send additional events to Dynatrace. We also automatically do real user monitoring. So all the data that you see here is basically data that ends up in our, we call it the data lake house. The name for it is Grail. And so in case you're new to this, the data, what we're analyzing here comes from Grail, but I think it's also actually not limited to Grail, because we also have the ability to even run JavaScript code here to even query external data if you want to, right? There's so many options that we have.
Yeah, so that was the section with Grail, but you can also run code. Thomas will tell you a little bit more about that. I don't want to spoil that kind of, but yes, correct. So you can also bring kind of your external data in a notebook, because yeah, for sure, not everything is in Grail, not everything is in Dynatrace. There's always some additional data that you would like to use for your analysis, and there's also a way to do that.
And maybe one more question here, and I want to make sure also, Thomas, that you get enough time. But this question is, clearly you can share, or can you share some details on limits? So it's clear that notebooks store the results from the last run of a query, but I imagine there are some sort of limits on how big these snapshots can be. Is there some kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, whatever it is?
Yeah, so currently there is a limit of 50 megabytes per document that you can create, but you can create multiple documents. But that's something we are still looking into. So kind of finding a sweet spot, how big these documents get. Yeah.
And then there's one more question that talks about, can business events be added and compared to performance or errors? So dollars lost in revenue because of slow shopping carts. Yes, you should check out some of our breakouts at Perform even, right? If you can go to perform.dynatrace.com. I remember we had Mitchells and Butlers there showing how they are using business events to measure their performance and business impact. We also had a company from Austria, even one of our large vendors of furnitures. They showed how they use business events to analyze the whole end-to-end order processing. And you can then also correlate this to performance and errors.
Exactly. So you mentioned Thomas, he should have enough time for his demo as well. That's true, but there are so many great questions. I almost cannot stop. Maybe one last thing I wanted to show, and I think Andy, you teased that there will be maybe also a session with you at some point. So I'm looking at time series data here. So I'm looking at CPU usage, but that makes sense. I would, for example, split this by host, and then let's, sake of time, just limit it to one host. And I can now see the CPU of this host. So it was somewhere between 90% and 20% over last time. And one really cool thing that we are currently building into notebooks is, maybe you have seen that option before, is this Davis analyze function. So I can now filter and forecast on that metric. And what you see is now, and there's also a great visualization for that at the end. Now you have the Davis functionality inside a notebook and can kind of forecast data that you analyze. And I think this is really great. I mean, this is a CPU metric, but think of a disk usage, for example. So you can finally do your analysis, do capacity planning, where you say, okay, when will this disk run out of disk space, for example? How do I, maybe does my automation that I have work in the way it's intended? So really, really amazing stuff also coming directly to notebooks.
It's kind of, what I've heard people do is really kind of predictive automation.
I think we lost him. He's back.
Yeah, am I back? Was I lost? I wanted to just say this is an awesome capability, and I think what I've seen people do is predictive automation almost, right? Where you can say, I want to scale up, scale down when I see I'm moving into the wrong direction, and that's pretty cool. And the Philipp, as you said, I will be doing a clinic probably middle of April on with the forecasting team, with the team that built the mathematical models behind the scenes here, and they will show a little bit more what's possible.
Yeah, I'm sure they have a more interesting example than mine here. Okay, so Thomas has it. I mentioned him actually here. One other really cool thing about notebooks is that they are collaborative. So at some point during your analysis, it's definitely you want to either share your results to a colleague, or you want to work on a notebook together. There's this share button here where you have either the possibility to share directly to a person, or copy the link, sending it over Slack. This is what I will do now. Let's give Thomas edit rights as well and copy this link. So Thomas, I will send this over to you. Let's see if you can open it. And then I will kind of pass over to you, Thomas, and I think you have some exciting news about dashboarding as well.
Nah, same old story. Can you see my browser? Because today nothing works for me.
The question is, I will see the browser including your Slack channel.
That's not intended. See?
I think you need
streak.
We'll give you a course on how to use the mouse correctly.
I literally had to switch between Wi-Fi and my phone now because in the office even the internet is unstable today, so I'm not lucky. But you can see notebooks, right? So
yes.
that worked.
Yeah.
So the product works. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see notebooks. You see that it's as simple as passing a link. You can, of course, I mean, I don't have rights because Philipp obviously does not trust me. It's just read only, I think, at this point. Otherwise, I would have a share button and I could then also reshare stuff and obviously also do the same with not just a link, but also per user or group. But even though I really love notebooks, I love dashboards even more, unsurprisingly. And yeah, let's actually jump over to dashboards. And I will go through a few tabs with different dashboards open to make the point that I actually made before with these 5 points. And one, I don't think I need to go too deep into this, but yes, we do have still dark mode as you have seen before. And yes, actually we look quite the same as notebooks because we share lots of flows in order to make it easier for you to switch, go back and forth. So not to waste time along the way when observing or exploring. And you can definitely tell that this looks different from a normal casual dashboard that we used to have. Again, everything cleaner and new. And actually, let's also put logs here. And you can also see that we also have the side panel. So it's super quick and easy to add stuff on the fly and also to switch between different data. It's as simple as one click, and it's also as simple as one click to edit things or no, not a lot to do here. And I spoiled it before with switching too fast. Yes, we also come in white now. So that's the whole experience part. Faster, more seamless. Yes, we come in white. And that's the experience part. To wrap it up quickly, the other one is I said all data in one place, right? And Philipp already said all this comes from Grail, and that's true for both apps. And that's I really love this example because it's the best in terms of what you weren't able to do before, which is actually put event or problem data on your dashboard. And this is actually demonstrating that now with Grail, with having all that thing in one place and being able to fetch all these data types from one place, you actually can do that easily and conveniently. And it's all the same for all these data types when it comes to then going one step further and adapting this. So that's the second part, which is all data in one place. That's then the third, which is now that you have data in one place from all these beloved data sources, what if you wanted to actually go one step further and blend in external data? And Philipp already spoiled it. Yes, I'm going to show you. That's a markdown. But if I go here and I'm lucky and it works, then you see that here I don't have query, but I have code now. And this is actually coming from, as you can tell, I will make this a bit bigger so you can see it. From, for instance, a GitHub. So it comes from an external source and populates a whole table of products. Or in that case, I'm actually, again, also coming from GitHub, but you could put in any API that you desire and fetch that data. And of course, you can also change visualization types. The same here, you can also adapt tables, etc., as you've seen before, as with normal Grail data. And you can also go one step further and do a bit more magic and then traverse data, calculate averages, for instance, and then visualize it as a single value if you're funny. So you can see not just all the data from Grail, but then also put next to it and maybe some use cases that we've already seen with customers. I think I kind of put it here. One is obvious. What if you wanted to, for instance, filter your data by teams? So it's about segmenting your data, also your observability data. What if you have product data that you want to blend in? Easy, you can do it. So these are quite common use cases. Or if you think about digital experience and business analytics, what if you wanted to have your business data like orders, bookings, etc., right next to your observability data? All now possible with ad hoc functions and with JavaScript. So you can go wild here. That's the third part. And the question is, what are the two remaining ones? I will start with filters because even though we invested quite a bit in the current solution, they are not very, let's say, generic, as in they do quite some matching on top, and so you're not always as flexible as you want to be. And therefore, we actually redesigned this. And you can see here, you also get dropdowns, nothing new there, right? But the way how you actually create these is way different, I would argue. Before, you were able to look at entities and define filters for entities. Now you are fully flexible, which means if I now create a new variable, you can see that you got all these different approaches that I actually mentioned before, which is you can query Grail, so all the data in Dynatrace, and use exactly the same language, exactly the same statements here as well for your filters, or you could fetch external data and use ad hoc functions to do this. Or in some cases, or maybe even many cases, you're just lazy and you know all your 5, 6 values, and you just use a comma separated list. As simple as that. And to make the point, let's actually do this again. I think I don't have it. Oh, I do have it on here. Then make it applications because host is already there. Then it's as simple as saying fetch dt entity, and then hopefully get suggestions these days. And I could go wild and say application and demo effect. Wow, no, it's there. You see application IDs. You can then also obviously refine this and then say, okay, I actually don't want to have the ID, but I actually want to have the entity name. If that works today, no. Yeah, I screwed up. Should be fields, not. So as you see, I'm not the super proficient Grail/DQL pro yet, but I hopefully will be soon.
As you talk about DQL and as you try to figure this out, I just answered another question from Ladislav. DQL, the Dynatrace Query Language, super powerful. In order to learn how powerful it is, I just posted a link in your to your question, but I will also add the link in the general chat. It's called the Practical Guides to DQL. This was a video we just posted earlier this morning, where one of our colleagues, he actually explained how DQL works, how it's structured, and how you start exploring your data. Hopefully, Vladislav, that will help you.
Yes, great session. I've watched it. Taught me a few things. Not enough, obviously. You've seen I've created it. I've actually then went one step further. Instead of the ID, I wanted the name, and now I got a drop-down with applications, as you can see. But now the question comes up, how do I then actually tie this together with my tiles? It's as simple as, and you can see on top here, I already defined, for instance, the log level. It's as simple as then in the query saying, okay, this time I want to filter by in log level, whatever I have selected in this variable /filter dropdown. And that means, let's actually put this away again. If I instead here go to, let's say, just notice and severe and worn, I can only see notice, severe, and worn, and it filters down my data. And the same works with code. You can also use this variables in code to do the same for your external data. Mm-hmm. And that's more generic and more versatile filtering, the fourth. And the last, I think you already spoiled, so I don't need to show it too much, which is intense. And in that case, let's try to go full circle. Whenever I do this, something breaks, but I do it nevertheless. Let's actually go back to notebooks. Ooh, even asks me. Crazy. Yeah, let's do a new one. I don't like yours. And all there. As simple as that. Beautiful.
Cool that you're back in notebooks, Thomas. Now, but one question maybe from my side, and because it comes up quite often. So you were saying, hey, dashboard and notebooks, that looks quite similar. We have built similar ways to configure it. So what is actually the difference between those apps?
Oh, was that a question to me?
That was a question, but yes.
Should I answer it? Okay, let's actually, now I'm crazy. I will stop this. I go back to the presentation that didn't work before and probably still doesn't work for me, but I could.
I hope you find your mouse.
Oh no, still doesn't work. What's wrong with me today? Okay, but can you see it? I go wild. I just go this way. Coming back to these 4 points, that it would have looked prettier than just an empty slide before, as you can tell by now. Let's try here, Q&A, because I think that's a good segue, because I'm done with my part. And let's actually pull up this, which, even though my beloved PM colleague, Philipp Kastner, doesn't like the slide that I created, I think it still summarizes well what's the difference. And you can read on the left side a few characteristics about dashboards and notebooks. And for dashboards, it's all about observing. So it's live data, it's refreshing, it's temporary, it's still interactive to some extent. And in terms of layout, it's two-dimensional, so you can do more polished stuff. While notebooks, it's sequential, as you can, as you have seen before. So one after the other, it's full width. However, it persists the results, as we already learned today, and it's interactive a lot, and we'll get more and more collaborative along the way. And I think the biggest though here is definitely the persisting part. And the refreshing part in that sense. So whenever you're on the dashboard, it refreshes. Here you have to always hit the run button, but deliberately, because queries can get big and take longer if you go into analyzing things and joining things together. So all in all, that's the right set then of that you can see. When should you use it? If you, again, look at it on a frequent and refreshing basis, so observing data, then use dashboards. Do you care about live data? If you care about layout. However, if you want to go deep, so explore your data instead of observing. If you want to prototype with functions, with queries, if you want to go deeper, then you will definitely use notebooks. Mm-hmm. And yes, you will always keep your results.
Yeah. That's a cool, I like this slide too. I'm not sure why Philipp doesn't like it. I like it.
You should have coffee or beer over this.
Yes. I wonder, Vladislav is coming back with, he means coming back to what type of data do we have? So all the data that you guys have shown today that we can put on notebooks and dashboards is data that can be either queried through DQL, that means data in Grail, or from an external data source. Now coming to Grail, right now what we have in Grail and what we've also announced at Perform, logs, you've shown metrics, we have seen events, what's coming is traces and real user data. Right? That's all coming. So Vladislav, for your use case, because you know you're interested in analyzing real user data using Dynatrace user session query language. As of today, you would still use your Dynatrace user query language. Once that data is also in Grail, you will be able to query that data also through DQL. Guys, Thomas, Philipp, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct. So it's coming. One thing you could even do today is in the functions we showed. Basically, those are the Dynatrace ad hoc functions, and they come with specific SDKs for you. And one thing is you can very easy call the Dynatrace APIs through the functions. So without authenticating, basically, or with automatically authenticating, you can fetch data with that. So for now, for example, you could query user sessions and integrate them in a notebook that way, but full Grail support is coming in.
Mm-hmm. And then the question from Vladislav coming up. So I need to update. So I think what we show you today is what every customer, every SaaS customer will get once this goes GA. GA starts with end of April, and then we have a rollout for different regions, one after the other, also as we announced. So depending on which SaaS region you're in, you will be able to then just flip the switch and you get to the new experience, you get to all of the new apps. That's for SaaS. And Vladislav, I'm not sure if you're SaaS or managed, but you don't need to update. This will just happen for you because we will basically update your update, make them better. You get all these new capabilities once we GA this. Then there is another question. Jackie was asking a follow-up on external data in dashboards. Does it accept Excel documents too? Excel.
So I would say, I mean, again, what the external data code, it's really running a JavaScript, TypeScript function in the Dynatrace serverless environment. So you can do basically anything, right, that you can do with JavaScript. So you could fetch Excel and parse that, or yeah, I don't know what we don't support currently is that you can maybe just have a tile and add a Excel somehow, just dropping it into your browser. So that's currently not possible. But if you have it somewhere, if there's some API where you can access it, so that would be possible. Yeah.
I would also, and I'm not an Excel expert, but I think you can export every Excel either as a CSV or as JSON. That means you can then just maybe drop it even in a function, in a JavaScript function, and then return that as a result, and then you can do whatever you want. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So JSON would be a good thing here, because then it's easier in JavaScript to work with it. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there is so much more to show actually. For example, for generic JSON, we also offer these visualizations, right? So if you have a function that returns some data for you, you can still, for example, visualize it as a bar chart on your dashboard or in a notebook. Yeah, there's, I don't know, for example, one thing I didn't show today is parsing of data. So if you find something in a log line and you want to only pass out a specific ID, we have a very powerful pattern language to parse things out of your log line, any data, actually, event data, and it's very nicely integrated in notebooks, actually, that helps you writing these patterns and discovering additional data.
Yeah, this is just the beginning. I think what we also all said today is we're just seeing what's possible with this new opportunity that we are giving our users, while Dynatrace, the core platform with all of the apps that we have, right? The service screens, the host screens, the problems. This is, I think we cover obviously all the use cases we always covered, but now we allow you to take your data, massage it as you need it, and build automation even around it, so that you can really solve the problems that we as Dynatrace, don't solve out of the box, because maybe it's not a core APM, a core performance, a core real user monitoring use case. You can solve your particular use cases because we give you all the data, and we give you the automation around it, and we give you the visualization and the way you can analyze and dig into it. I think that's what I love about it. All right. Can you explain what SaaS is? Dynatrace SaaS, software as a service, not SAS. I think SAS is a company. Software as a service. We are in all regions basically around the world, right? We are. I think if you watch the clinic I did, and I'll just send you that link as well. So this clinic here, this is a YouTube video where we did the first kind of recap of Perform, and in the end, we also cover exactly which regions we are going to kind of GA first. But whether you are in the US, whether you are in Europe, whether you are in Asia Pac, you will get Dynatrace as a service. Most of our customers are already leveraging Dynatrace as a service. And we also see that based on what the announcements that we made, and that we have a cloud first and a SaaS first strategy, that many also of our managed customers really now make the move also to SaaS. And we can provide these capabilities that we have here much easier and much more economical in SaaS. Much better scale and better performance. Good, guys. As you both said, there's so much new stuff, but there's only a little time in one of these clinics. I think we will, Thomas, I mean, we did some power dashboarding stuff over the last years on focusing on the existing Dynatrace platform. I'm pretty sure we'll do another power dashboarding where you can just focus on your dashboards. And then Philipp, this is just the start with notebooks. And as you said, there's so many more things.
So thanks for inviting us, actually. And I think we are definitely happy to come back at some point.
Yeah. Always happy to invite you. And folks, if you watch this recording, if you have questions, there is an Ask Me Anything, happens pretty much every week. You can register. And what you should also do is reach out to a Dynatrace team, go to the community, watch the other clinics, the other videos, There's a lot of information, and we will make sure that we provide all the information you need so that you become successful with what we are building. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.